This video may contain what could be considered attorney advertising under the rules of your state. This video is for information purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a legal problem, it's vital for you to seek out and talk to a licensed attorney for advice. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Chris Simmons, attorney at law. And today, we're going to talk about illegal alien, specifically why we shouldn't use the term illegal alien. Instead, we should use the term undocumented immigrant. So let's talk about those words first. Illegal alien. Well, illegal in our culture, in our society, is synonymous with criminal. Illegality is criminality. When you think of someone doing something illegal, you think of criminal actions first. So calling them illegal aliens instead of undocumented immigrants puts this baggage on them. It puts this notion that they are criminals when that's not actually correct. Now, if you want to get really technical, and there needs to be a distinction made, but if you want to get really technical, 8 U.S.C. 1325 defines 3 crimes dealing with immigration. Okay? 2 of them are defrauding the government. Marriage fraud and commercial fraud. Setting up a business for the purpose of avoiding immigration rules. Marrying to avoid immigration law. Those are fraud. That's defrauding the government. Those have sentences of 5 years or $250,000 plus, depending on the commercial one, or both. Those are serious crimes. What most people think of is the lesser of the 3 in that section, and that is covered in section A and B. Entry without documents. Entry at the wrong time or the wrong place. What we traditionally think of as illegal entry. That is punishable by up to 6 months in prison or a $50 fine, no less than a $50 fine, no more than $250 fine, and that fine can double if you've entered illegally more than once. That's less than a parking ticket for some people. That's less than, well, not a parking ticket, but a traffic violation. To say that these people are criminals just because of that one small thing is akin to saying that Americans are criminal for parking violations or for traffic citations. And if you want to try that, go for it. But your argument's not going to be taken seriously. But in the most strict sense, yes, they are breaking a law. And yes, that has a criminal penalty attached to it. So yes, those people are criminals. But when they're deported, they aren't being deported because of the illegal entry. They're being deported because they aren't here with documentation. And that may not be much of a distinction. That may be me splitting hairs to a lot of people, but that distinction is very important. And to understand that, we need to understand what immigration violations actually are. There's a case from 1893. This is 125 years of precedent. It's, I apologize for my pronunciation, Fong Yu Tang versus the United States. It's from 1893. And it says that immigration violations, the act of deportation and removal, are civil, not criminal punishments. They're civil penalties, not criminal punishments. And that's because immigration is a national security issue, and it needs to be under the purview of the executive branch and Congress, not the judicial. So it's civil. These are civil penalties. So when a undocumented immigrant enters illegally, when they're in deportation and removal proceedings, the government will use that illegal entry, that crime, as evidence of them being in the country without documentation, but the actual charge is that they're in the country without documentation. It's a very fine distinction, but it's important. And the majority of people who are here undocumented didn't enter illegally. So 8 USC 1325 doesn't even apply to them. The majority of undocumented immigrants came in with a visa. They came in via the visa waiver program, which allows countries who have a treaty with the United States to come into the United States for tourism purposes or business purposes, or just simply education if it's less than 90 days. They don't have to get a visa. They just come in, show their passport, get a stamp, stay here for 90 days, leave. 91st day, they're an undocumented immigrant. You have an F1, B1, B2 visa. The day after that expires, if you're not out of here, you're an undocumented immigrant, technically. So most of the people never committed the crime that a lot of people think they did. So now we have to discuss why that distinction matters. For criminal defendants, we have due process. We have certain high thresholds of due process and protections for criminal defendants. If you are charged with theft, let's say it's a felony. Let's say you stole $10,000, okay? You are afforded an attorney. The government must prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. You have appeals processes. You have all of these protections afforded to you because you are a criminal defendant. But if you're in violation of a civil offense, deportation, remove it. If you are here undocumented, the government doesn't have to show beyond a reasonable doubt. They only have to show preponderance of evidence. And the easiest way to explain preponderance of the evidence is if it's more likely than not that you did it, they fine for the government. 51% or higher chance that you are here undocumented, they'll fine for the government. You don't get an attorney. There's no automatic right to or access to an attorney. Immigrants have to hire attorneys like me to help them. The consequences of these proceedings are huge. It tears apart family. It will tear apart families. It will tear apart businesses. It can leave people stranded. It can leave children without their parents, or force children to go with their parents to a country that they've never been to before. There are all these horrific implications to this, but we don't give them the same rights as criminal defendants. But the punishment can be just as severe. So, when we use the word illegal alien, we are putting the notion that they are criminal, when most of them are peaceful. The vast majority of undocumented immigrants are peaceful. They come here, they work, they go to school, they live their lives. No problems for anyone else. But we treat them like criminals, and every time we call them illegal aliens, we're putting that notion on them. So my proposal is simply this. If we're going to continue to use the term illegal alien, we need to restructure our entire immigration system, and we need to overturn 125 years of precedent and give undocumented immigrants the same rights that are afforded to a criminal defendant. Give them automatic access to an attorney paid for by the state. Give them the same due process. Give them the same burden of proof. Force the government to show beyond a reasonable doubt that they are here. Give them the right to a jury trial. If we're going to treat them as criminals, let's actually treat them as criminals and give them all of these. And if we're not willing to do that, and that solution is impractical, that would require us to completely restructure our entire immigration system. The easier solution, the better solution, is realize that undocumented immigrants are violating civil law. They face civil penalties, but they aren't criminals. They aren't criminals in our system. So we shouldn't treat them as criminals. And we should stop using illegal aliens, because that puts that notion on them unfairly, unduly. So, undocumented immigrants perfectly describes them, without the fear-mongering, without putting all the baggage on them. And if we're not willing to restructure our entire system to treat them the way those words imply, then we need to stop using those words. I hope that this made sense. There's a lot of information packed into a small amount of time. I may come back to this at some point and explain further. I may come back and read the Supreme Court decision, because it is a very important decision. But I hope that what we've discussed today has made sense, and I hope that it can start a discussion as to why we need to stop using these words. And if you have a counterpoint, then I hope you can discuss it with actual facts. But regardless of your feelings on the matter, I'll see you in the next video.